If you think high earning copywriters are just somehow better than low earners, you'd be wrong. I mean, sure, experience and talent do play a role, but not nearly as much as you would think. In fact, the real reasons may surprise you. So, why do some copywriters charge $50 a project while others make $5,000 for a very similar project? If you've been struggling with pricing, undervaluing your work, or maybe saying yes to the wrong clients, this episode is for you. You're listening to the High Conversion Health Marketer Podcast, the show that helps you craft memorable copy and messaging that connects, captivates, and converts. My name is Linda Malone. I am a certified conversion copywriter and an award-winning content writer whose copy has earned my clients major contracts from even just a single email sequence and website copy that's provided as much as 40% increase in leads. So my mission is to help you, the health and fitness marketer, attract your ideal client with copy that they can't resist so you can grow your business. So here's what you'll take away from today's episode. You'll learn about the role of confidence, positioning, and knowing how to price for value rather than hours. You'll also learn about actionable strategies and real talk to help you go from feeling stuck to owning it as a premium copywriter. I'm also going to share some scripts with you how to handle the common pricing objections that you will probably get to handle them like a pro. When I first started out, I made all the mistakes. And I'm talking more about copywriting than content writing. Content writing, and this is article writing for magazines, was predetermined by the editor. It could be a common rate was 50 cents a word, all the way up to Reader's Digest would pay $5 a word, which is crazy because you can get so much more money. But that was not determined by the writer themselves. Copywriting is different. So I began copywriting and had no idea how to negotiate. I didn't know how to price myself. And I ended up spending way too much time haggling with clients who would eventually ghost me. This is after spending way too much time with them on a discovery call. I would cave into requests for a lower price and regretted it every single time. And this also goes when I was working as a personal trainer. When people negotiate or they haggle with you and argue with you over your pricing, it's always downhill from there. So I would price out of desperation. I would really forget my own value. And in other ways, I was more concerned with people pleasing and then standing firm on my value and worth. And side note, people don't know this about me. I'm very much an introvert. I'm not shy, but I have a hard time standing up for myself at times. And this really came through when I was trying to negotiate price. And what I'm going to share with you is going to show you how you can get over that. But I finally learned what's holding me back and how to resolve it. So these are some of the things I'm going to share with you today. So I'm going to start with an eye-opening statement. This is something I actually heard recently and really resonated with me. And that is that your pricing is part of your brand. Now think about it. If you look at an ad for a Rolex watch and the price tag was something like $50, I mean, that doesn't go along with their brand at all. Then again, you go into the dollar store, you don't expect to see a $50,000 Rolex. So it's all part of that branding. And high value copy isn't just for clients that want, great converting copy. I mean, that's obviously it, but they want the confidence and the leadership from you as the person who's the expert in copywriting and measurable results. So you want to position yourself as the expert who delivers outcomes that they can't ignore, and you'll be amazed at the difference. So it turns out when people pay premium rates, they trust your expertise more and respect your time. So there's the story about Steve Jobs hiring a graphics artist. It's a pretty famous story to create the logo for Apple. And he said, I want to see Steve Jobs says, I want to see like 3 of your best designs and I'll decide. And the artist stood up to him and said, I will create one logo. You're either going to like it or you're not going to like it, but you're going to pay me either way. And what ended up happening is Steve Jobs respected him so much for standing up to him, because no one stood up to Steve Jobs, right? And this is the kind of thing, they ended up working together for a long time. But that's the kind of confidence you need to have in yourself when you set your prices. And so one of the big mistakes, so we'll go with number one of the downfalls is you want to avoid trading time for money. So I'm talking about hourly rates. Hourly pricing caps your income. It's not beneficial to you or to your client because neither knows how long it's going to take. I mean, you probably have an idea, but it's a trap because hourly pricing puts a cap on your earnings, forces clients to see your work as a time-based commodity rather than the results that you deliver. So even if you say to yourself, okay, this project's going to take me 10 hours. If my rate is $50 an hour, I think, well, what's the value of this project to my client? Instead of thinking that, you maybe think, okay, so it's $500 I will, price this project out at. But the problem is you're not considering the value of this project to your client. So I'll give you an example. I wrote an email sequence. It was 5 emails. It may have been 7 now that I think about it. It was a couple years ago. And one of those emails, just one alone, which probably added up, it probably wasn't the one specific, but the few before that, landed my client a $70,000 contract. They paid me $1,500 for that email sequence. Do you think that they would regret or that they regretted spending that money? Of course not. So that's the mindset you have to have. So how much more money will you help that company generate? And so when you're writing the copy that could generate, like, say, an additional $50,000 or even like 70, do you really think that $500 is going to work for that kind of value? Of course not. So the answers, you want to ask your clients 2 questions during discovery calls. What's your goal for this project? And how would success look to you? And so you want them to really focus on the value that you're going to be bringing and the increase in revenue and how much you're going to help their business. You want to give them that perspective. I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit. But the second thing that you want to avoid is to be too much of a generalist. It's tempting to be a generalist because you're like, I don't want to, close the doors on anyone. It doesn't mean that, but it means that when you are trying to appeal to a specific group, they're more likely to find you. And when you try to appeal to everyone, you dilute your expertise. And I've given this example many times in other podcasts, so sorry if you've heard it before, but it really exemplifies this. When I was working as a personal trainer, and I had a client who had to have shoulder surgery. She went to a doctor who specialized only in shoulders. Okay, that's not so weird, right? But only shoulders for women. So she only treated women who had shoulder injuries. And this doctor was booked out for months because she had niched down to a point where you would think, wow, that's kind of pushing it, isn't it? But no, because there's such a need for that, and she knew it. So when you think about yourself, even with me, since I decided to niche down to health and fitness, because that's my background, I've been getting a lot more business. And the people who are finding me because of that niche. So specializing allows you to charge higher rates because now you're seen as the expert. Like, I'm like the go-to fitness copywriter for people who know my background. And I have an extensive background. So think about, what is your background that makes you unique? So it attracts clients who trust your understanding of their industry. When I wrote fitness articles and I had to interview a lot of experts in the field, a lot of them told me, I'm really happy to talk to you and be interviewed for this article because I know with your background, you can fill in the gaps where, I might miss something. Where if you don't know the expertise and people are talking to you and you don't really have the ability to extrapolate or figure out what they're saying if you're not sure. So that's where people will trust you more. And it also builds a stronger portfolio that really amplifies your credibility. So take a minute, if you have not niched down into a particular area, think about maybe 3 areas that you're really passionate about, or maybe more experienced in, and look at those and think about and consider narrowing down your marketing efforts into those niches. Number 3, and this is a big one, is you have to know how to handle price objections. And I confessed earlier that I'm not really good at this. I've gotten way better at it, but you have to really position yourself as a high value copywriter, and you have to have that in your mind, like that you are worth it. And so when someone comes up to you or your client, you're on a discovery call and they say, well, that seems a bit pricey. So what do? You have to understand a couple things. One, that pricing objections are normal. People are almost always going to try to push back. So you have to keep in mind the value that you bring. And if you're an out and out beginner, it's going to be hard. You do want to have something that you have in your mind. Like there's a copywriting coach I work with who said to us, you want to have what she called a cheat sheet of awesomeness. And this was literally like a paper that you would prepare ahead of time for yourself. Write down all the times that you did really well at a project and people were happy with you, your client was really happy, and review those notes before you get on this kind of call. So you boost yourself up before you get on the call. If you're on that call worrying before you even get started, you've lost before you've even started the conversation. So the way to respond to this is say something like, I understand this is an investment and I totally get that. But what I can promise you is a final product that helps you, and then tell them what the benefit is. Increase conversions, grow your email list. And for this purpose, they really should have some kind of starting analytics. If it's a new startup company, sometimes they don't. But you want to have a way to prove that you are going to deliver the results that you say you're going to. Or you can also be flexible with the scope of the project. I've done this many times. If I propose, and usually I give like an outline before I send an actual proposal to a client, and I will list the things and here's what I charge, here's what the total would be. And then if they push back and say, well, this is more than what I'm planning, I will talk to them. As long as they are still talking to you, you still have a really good chance, because that means that they're still considering you. When they ghost you, there's nothing you can do about that. And that's happened to me more times than I care to admit, but it happens to everyone. But the whole idea of negotiating is you get with them and you say, okay, here are all the things that I can do, but why don't we modify some of whatever it is that you're offering? So for example, for me, I offer a value proposition audit. It's like a branding audit, and that's really my specialty. And so I start with that, and then everything that follows, it's a website page, it's something. And sometimes they say this whole package is a bit much more than I planned on. I'll say, why don't we start with the audit, because that's the foundation of all the copy I'll be doing for you. And I explain the value of it, what I get, and there's a lot that is involved in that. And usually they'll say, okay, let's do that. In this way, you have a chance to work with them, and you can each see how each of you works together. Because sometimes it's not just that you want the business, maybe you just don't get along with them. And that can happen. You want to make sure that doesn't before you get too far into it, though, because then it's just a nightmare. So you want to make sure that they focus on that. So you can be flexible, or you can also remind them of your value is probably the biggest thing. And then the other thing to keep in mind is to don't price out of fear. When you lower your price out of fear, it's a big mistake. So again, I mentioned earlier, clients respect confidence. So you want to stand firm on what you charge. So if they can see that you're really not sure of yourself, or you start backing down, it makes them think maybe you're not worth what you're asking, and you kind of know it. You never want that to be the case. If you're afraid of losing the client, fear of being too expensive, the high value clients respect you more when you stand firm on your pricing. They see it as a reflection of your confidence and expertise, and it's really not about the cost, it's about the outcome. I have found too that the best clients I've had through the years are those who don't haggle with me, because they know my value off the bat, and they usually pay the fastest. There's no arguing. I had a client recently who came back to me for a second project who said, let me know if you go over on your hours, because we're doing a new type of project. And he said, if you go over on your hours, let me know if you need more money. And I said, this is why you're one of my favorite clients, because the clients that respect you will say things like that. So let me give you a before and after mindset shift. Okay, this is going to change everything. So here's the before scenario. If you are pricing hourly and you're pricing out of fear. So you get a client query for a website copy and you think, okay, this is going to take me 10 hours. I'll charge $50 an hour. I'll send a quote. Project will be about 500. The client says, well, it's a bit high. Can you do it for 300? And you hesitate. You don't want to lose them. So you agree, even though you start resenting the project right out of the gate. And then the client starts nitpicking everything. They're asking for endless revisions. They pay late. And so what happened? You based your price on effort, not results. And the client sees you as an expense, not an investment. So let's take the same scenario, but we're going to call this the value-based mindset, or owning your worth. This is how the conversation and your mindset should go. So you ask the two key questions I mentioned before. You ask the client, what's your goal for this project? What would success look like to you? And then the client will say something like, we want our website to convert more leads. Right now we're losing potential customers. And you think, okay, if this copy increases our conversions by even 2%, this could bring in $50,000 in new revenue. So you want to have an idea of what your impact of your copy could have. And then you price accordingly. And so you would say, well, this project is $3,500 because the copy will be, strategically written to drive those conversions. And the client will more likely say yes without haggling. So what changed? Instead of selling words or time, you sold an outcome. So the client saw your work as an investment, not a cost. To apply this right away, next time you price a project, stop and ask, am I pricing for effort or impact? Shift your language from this will take me X hours to this will help you achieve specific results. If a client asks for a lower price, don't cave, reinforce the value, remind them of the return on investment, and maybe negotiate some of the scope of the project. All right, there you have it. Confidence, specialization, value-based pricing, and actual scripts to squash those client objections. So these strategies are your roadmap to consistently land $5,000 and above copywriting projects. But just remember, it's not just about the price tag. It's about working with clients who value your expertise and your time and who are easy to work with. That cannot be underestimated. So if you found this episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast, share it with your copywriter friends and marketing friends, and drop me a message. And I'd love to hear from you. Talk to you next week.